Today, Coach Dylan Lynville joins us to break down film from Super Bowl 59. We're going to go over 8-man box run fits, play action passes, and screens. Let's film study.
All right, so here's the first thing I was thinking. We could go through an 8-man box with 2 backs and an 8-man box with 1 back and kind of talk about the differences.
Okay,
we'll start there. All right, so look, this is the way I have to start everything the same way because I have a process when it comes to watching film. And the process goes like this. We have 4 domains of awareness, okay? First domain is the situation. Okay, so there's a situational domain. So this is everything that you can find on the scoreboard, right? This is the score. This is the down in the distance. This is how much time's left in the game, what quarter, what hash. Really, hashes doesn't have to be situational, but all the things that you can know before the offense even steps on the field. Okay, so that's my situation. Yeah. So in this case, we have a 1st and 10. That's really all I need to know. There are some times where you need to know more of a situation than that, like how much time is left and things like that. In this case, all we need to know is first play of the game, 1st and 10. Good enough, right? So the next thing I do is what's called structural awareness. So this is the formation and the backfield. All right. So I have a different way of naming formations than most coaches, and the reason is because everybody has a different way. And so I've tried to sort of standardize this. So the way I name formations is like this. From a defensive perspective, always, all right, we go left to right. So over here, I have 2 receivers to the left, right? I have 2 eligibles to the right, tight end there. And now I can give them tags, right? So I'd say this is base 22. There's 22 here, but we have to specify where they're at. So on this top side, I'm going to say cut 2, okay, because they're in cut splits or reduced splits. So cut 2. And then down here, we have a tight end that's one of those eligibles. He's on the ball, all right, and we have a cut split. So I would call this cut 2 up here, and 2 on cut here. So if it's on the right, the tag comes after the number. If it's on the left, it comes before. So up here, we say cut 2. Down here, I'd say on cut 2.
right.
2 on cut. All right. So this would be cut 22 on cut.
Yeah, I saw you do this in your videos. I like it. It simplifies it.
Yeah. I'm hoping it catches on because I think if everyone can just talk in numbers, everything else is in numbers. You know what I mean?
Right.
Personnel groupings, gaps, all of that, we know numbers. And for some reason, coaches have gotten very, I guess maybe territorial about formation names, and they got crazy X Jam Siegel. Like what? I don't know. What
is this means. How y'all did it when you were in the league, or did you kind of come up with this?
No, I made this up a couple years ago, and I've been using it with my kids ever since. It takes a minute to get used to, but as soon as they do, they can name any formation. See, the problem is with all the different formations you get now, people are getting really creative with formations. It's not just your basic twins, trips. Like there's all kinds of crazy things. So I have 7 tag words. All right, and then the other that's all the whole formation is one of those 7 tag words or maybe multiple tag words, and then 2 numbers. How many on the left? How many on the right? That's it. Right now, to me, the backfield is separate from the formation. So I call the formation as the perimeter. All right, so that's cut 2, 2 on cut, and then the backfield here I just call this home back or dot back. All right, I do have a system for that. We can talk about that later, but it typically goes like this. We name the quarterback first. Where is he? Right. If he's under the center, we don't say anything. If he's in gun, we say gun. Right. Then we move on to the fullback. If there is no fullback, we just go right to the tailback. If the fullback is offset strong, we say he's over. Okay. And if he's offset weak, we say he's under, just like a 3 technique.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so over and under, and then the back offset strong is near and away is far. All right. So that's pretty much covers everything. The only other difference is we can get pistol. And I would just call that if the quarterback's in gun and the back is behind him directly, then that's pistol. If there's a fullback involved, then we would say pistol, under, or over. All right. So that kind of deals with everything. There are some like rare backfield sets, wishbones, diamonds, and stuff like that where you would use other names. All right. So but that covers that. So now we've got one thing we skipped, personnel grouping. So that's also part of to me that's like half situational, half structural, but I call it structural because that's who it's made up of. So we got 1 back, 1 tight end. That's 11, right? Everybody uses that. Everybody knows 1 back, 1 tight end, 11. All right. So now,
for me.
You got to move around to get it to go on.
Yeah, kind of censor.
Just wave your hands. That happens to me in the bathroom sometimes when I take too long. All right. So in this case, we're about to get an 8-man box. All right. So here comes Gardner Johnson's coming down into the box, right? So to me, an 8-man box is cover 1 or cover 3. That's it, right? A 7-man box is anything with an even number, 2, 4, 6, right? All right. So this is going to be, I think this is It actually doesn't matter, but I think it's cover one. But it doesn't matter because we're going to talk about the run fit, okay?
And I was just going to say real quick, Ryan's been helping me a lot with run fits. I'm a DB guy naturally, and I know the box, but just trying to progress and learn more about it. He's been helping me out a lot talking about this. So this is good for me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Dylan teaches me stuff on the back end. I teach him stuff up front, and it works out nicely.
We're always learning and improving. Sure.
All right, so this is kind of a unique situation, but we're going to use our rules, okay? The rule is the backfield includes anybody between the tackles and off the ball, all right? So right now we only have one back in the backfield, all right? Right now, we have two backs in the backfield, kind of, right? He's still a receiver because he's not really stopping, but watch. He comes back, and the ball snapped right there.
Yep.
So he's a fullback, right? So I was saying earlier to somebody, we don't really care about the starting formation. We care about the ending formation, the formation when the ball is snapped. That tells us structurally what we're going to get, okay? So in this case, we actually have eye backs. You see that? Even though this is a receiver, he's in a position to insert into the line, which makes him a fullback, all right? So now we have two backs, two gaps, right? So 8-man box, one back, one gap, two backs, two gaps, all right? Now I'm going to go to the other angle and explain, I'm going to go to the other angle and explain those gaps. We'll draw it up and we'll take our time. This is where people get really confused, I think.
Yeah, because you're right. At first, the whole, one gap, two gap thing is confusing. But once you start to understand it, it really can give you an advantage.
Well, the beautiful thing about this is if you believe in the rule, right, then you figure out what has to happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes I look at these plays and I go, I don't see where the other guy is. And then I go, oh, it has to follow this rule because it's just math. It just so happens that because there are 8 guys, that they will always have one gap to be responsible for, right? That's just the way it works out. Now, watch, when he goes in motion. Now, before you even motions, I want to show you something. So you see Zach Bond and Nakobe right now, they're lined up in their gaps, right? Because it's a one-back set and they're an 8-man box. So right now, I'm just going to draw arrows in all these gaps. He's got that, right? He's got this, because technically that's a gap. If he were to crack block or something, he's got to replace. Right? There's always 11 gaps. All right. He's going to be there. You got the tackles in their gaps, right? I'm not going to draw those. He's there. Nakobe Dean's there, right? And then we got this guy off the edge. And out here, you can't see him. Let me move this thing another way. I can't. You can see him now. Oops. Hold on a second. How come I can't move this out of the way? All right. You see 29 here?
Yeah.
Our nickel. Can you see that, Dylan?
Yeah, I see him. Yeah.
Okay. He's our 8th guy, right? So we got a nickel here and then the safety coming down here. Okay. All right. So he's got this gap right here, right? That makes sense, yeah?
Yep.
All right. Now watch. When he goes into the backfield, right now, he can create a new gap wherever he goes. Make sense?
Yeah.
So now watch. If he goes here to the C gap, right? Then we have Gardner Johnson on the outside half of it. We got Bond on the inside half of it.
Yeah, and I think Bond might read this wrong right here.
He does read it wrong. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that, right? And then Nakobe Dean is going to fill this A gap here, and then we got our nickel backside who's going to come all the way to the B gap. There. Okay, he's in the box. I know it doesn't look like it from this angle, but he is.
And like we talked about, he's technically your cutback player, but he's responsible for that gap, so he's not really a cutback player.
You could call him a cutback player because he's on the backside.
Right.
But I'll tell you this: if the ball cuts back and winds off the edge, I'm blaming Nolan Smith.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Right.
Because guys have to know where they're going to go. He can't float out here and try to find where the cutback's going to be. He has to know Nolan Smith's going to stay in his outside his C gap, and I'm going to go fit in the B gap. If I wait, we create vertical seams. Like you mentioned earlier, Dylan, we got to build a wall, right? Everybody on the same level. So if he's waiting to see what Nolan Smith is doing, he's going to create a vertical seam.
Yeah.
Right? So ball snap, this is how it should fit. Okay, because that's where he goes. Let's watch. See, Bond is a little late. Now, Nakobe Dean knows right away. Right? He knows, hey, if he goes to my right, I'm going to that A gap. Watch him. No hesitation. He's going, he hits it, right? He shoots the gap, almost makes the play. That's really good.
And based on his momentum, he almost had to go that direction.
Who's that?
I'm talking about I think it's Reed, whoever's going in motion.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, it happens, but he would have to square back up and almost shuffle if he was going to come back the other way, right? Yeah. But regardless, ball snap, we can read it right now. First step is with the fullback. The next step is with the flow side line. So he steps this way, right? We're all going to step with our right foot, all right? When we step with our right foot, our eyes go to the right side of the line, or left as we're looking at it, but from a defensive perspective. And there's no contradiction, okay? So contradiction is anything pulling back across.
Right.
So as long as there's no contradiction, that's a confirmation. He's just going to go now. He knows, I'm going to step to this side. That's my A gap unless someone's pulling back. Nobody's pulling back. He goes and hits his A gap. See, N'Kobe Dean does that perfectly. All right. Now, Bond, the motion probably screws him up. This is his first start with the Eagles and so on and so forth, right? But initially, he's thinking I have that A gap, right? The problem is, as soon as this guy motions into the backfield, he has double duty now. He should not have bumped over that far. Okay. And when he comes back, he should actually be stacking the 3 technique. But we talked about if he went there. Now, if the fullback went here in the A gap, right, he's only going to go to where into gaps that don't have a defensive lineman already occupying, right? Yeah. So it's going to be that C gap, that A gap, that B gap, right, or something outside. All right, so now in this gap, right, we've got him here, Gardner Johnson on the outside half of it. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Is that right? Gardner Johnson on the outside half.
You're saying, I think he goes into the B gap over there, or C gap.
He goes C gap. Fullback. Oh, that's right. Yeah, he goes here. All right. He can spill or box this to N'Kobe Dean. So because there's a back now, there's 2 gaps in there. They both have to be in the gap. See that? And then the nickel out here has got this B gap again. Okay. So you can see how it just kind of shifts. Bond either has this C gap or this A gap. Dean either has this A gap or this B gap, and then the edge guys or the perimeter off ball guys are filling in where they are leaving out. So he's either going to be out here. He's either the only B gap player or he's the outside half of the B gap. You see what I mean?
Right.
He's either inside half of B gap or A gap. He's either inside half of A or outside half of A gap or inside half of C gap.
Yep.
Okay. So he eventually gets there and he makes a decent tackle. But if he had been there, if he had been moved over and stacked that 3 technique, as soon as that ball snapped, he should come screaming down off the hip of this tackle, basically force the double team off and get in his gap. Right? Then there would be nowhere to go. This Jacobs would end up winding right back to N'Kobe Dean here. But he's
I love playing it this way because you get some overlap and you're not expecting a dude to make the play by himself,
Right. No, it's impossible to tell a guy to take on a block and make the tackle. Like if it happens, that's great. Like we would love that. But if there are 2 gaps created by an insert, right, then we can't expect them to play both gaps. Like they're on scholarship too. That's what our coach used to always say. Hey, the other team's getting paid too. You know what I mean? All right. So that works out.
I was just going to say real quick, like last year we didn't teach this technique. We kind of taught like play your gap, and if it's closed, keep scraping. Yeah, which I think you eventually get to where you would get with this technique, but it's just way later. It's not.
Yeah. So like you talked about this earlier. Talked about you asked who's a cutback player, and then you said, and then I said, look, you play your gap and then you scrape, right? Or I say then you play leverage. It's the same thing. If he goes, look, let's go to the next play and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Yeah, this is just way more efficient playing it this way.
Well, it's the only way it ever works out mathematically. Yeah. All right, so look. Now we got 1 back, right? A true 1 back. There's nobody else in the backfield, right? And we have an 8-man box, right? You can see the single high safety. There's 8 in the box.
Right.
All right. So now we have 1 back, 1 gap, like truly 1 back, 1 gap, right? All right. Now let's go watch. Let's go watch it from the other angle. All right. And just to be clear, this is 2nd and 5. It's still 11 personnel, and formation was originally cluster 31. All right, and then the backfield is a home back. All right, I'm going to pause it right here. Now, look, 8-man box, 1 back, 1 gap. See how they're lined up right in their gaps? Mm-hmm. If there was 2 backs to start out, then I would want Bond to be stacking the 3 technique and N'Kobe Dean to be stacking the nose guard, because they either have to go to this gap or this gap, and he has to either go to this gap or this gap. Make sense? So you always want to be equidistant to all your responsibilities. So in this case, their only responsibility is the gap in front of them, so they can be right in front of it. Right? If there's another back, let's say Bond has potential to be inside half a C gap, outside half a gap, he needs to stack the 3 technique. Right. So anytime there's 2 backs in the backfield, stack the defensive lineman in front of you. Anytime there's 1 back, just line up right in your gap in an 8-man box. Okay. So now these guys can just go hit their gap. right? So Nakobe Dean's got this B gap. Zach Bond has this A gap. That's it. See that? Bond.
And
And obviously you move, huh?
he stays as tight as he can to that A gap.
Yeah, you want to be always as tight as you can to the inside half of the gap.
Yeah.
Right? If he gets too close to this guard here, he's going to get knocked off. But always attack the inside half of the gap first. Now, what we were talking about before, let's say he goes to that A gap right there, right? And Jacobs clearly bounces out here, right? Well, now he doesn't need to just go wedge himself in there, but I wouldn't want him to leave completely yet. So at this point, we want to scrape down what's called the heels of the D line, right? No, we don't want to be in the backfield because we'll get caught up in this mess. We want to stay at the heels of the defensive line, so our feet get to the heels of the D line, and then we can scrape. Now, once we're sure there's no cutback, now we can commit. Does that make sense? But right here, he's got to run through, so there's no reason to scrape.
And you can kind of see a cutback lane to the right there. Yeah. He gets cut off on the backside.
Exactly. I think that's Carter. Jalen Carter gets cut out of the B gap there. Or maybe that was the plan. He looks like he's swimming it. Oh, I know what he's doing. He probably thinks he's got time to run backside. So a lot of D linemen will do this. If the line is very flat like this, instead of trying to get in there and just getting washed by, he'll let him go by, and then he'll run down the backside and cancel this gap on this side of the line.
Yeah, just kind of squeeze it. Yeah.
You can squeeze it with his body, or he can actually go like this. If he runs down the backside of that line, like if a tackle blocks down and the end crashes, right? What he's doing is he's on the other side of the line of scrimmage, but he's canceling all the gaps backside.
Right.
See, so if Jalen Carter could swim this and then slip in behind him and just chase down here, he cancels the gap that he's responsible for. So that's probably what he's trying to do here.
Right, yeah.
The thing is, as a linebacker, you really can't play that game, right? This isn't a two-gap system. You have to believe that he's going to be in his gap. Because if you wait to see if he's going to be in his gap or not, you're going to get a vertical seam. So there's no hesitation here. As soon as Bond sees run, he goes and hits his A gap. Nakobe Dean's got a little tougher job, but his job is to stay in the B. He probably needs to get downhill a little more here, honestly. But that's pretty simple. I mean, to me, that's as easy as it gets. 8-man box, one back. Just line up in your gap and go.
Yep.
Now, it does get a little trickier when you start talking about pullers, right? Because but a puller carries the gap with him, right? So in other words, and we'll look at one if I can find one. All right, here's another. This
zone scheme.
Let's see. This is okay. So this is a 7-man box, I guess. Let's see. I don't know. Gardner Johnson. Let's see if I can go the other angle. No, he's lining up in his gap. Okay, no, it's still an 8-man box. All right, so same thing. One back, one gap.
Right.
All right, so he's just going to go hit that gap. He's just going to go hit that gap. It's really simple. There's really nothing. It's not exciting.
Yeah, and I was talking to my buddy earlier about, so especially if we have people that coach high school ball, most of the times, very rarely do you see teams that run both gap and zone scheme. And so, game planning, hey, this week we're going to be playing one gap. The next week we're playing two gaps. And so that's what I'm thinking going forward, because these high school kids, they might not be able to differentiate whether.
Well, yeah, I mean, in that weekend practice is typically when they get good at it, right? Like, if you throw all this stuff at them in preseason, they're going to see everything. They're going to mess everything up. That's just the way it is. But pretty soon it becomes a muscle memory. Like when you're playing a team that runs only zone, you get very used to just going and hitting your gap, right? And there's a slightly different technique. Like you learn how to ear hold people, and you learn how to play flat, and you learn when to take run throughs and things like that. Watch Nakobe Dean on this one. He's like a missile, man. But you see the difference between him and Bond here? See, there's no hesitation. Bond waits, and it allows the tight end to actually climb him. If Bond would have just go hit that C gap that C gap right now, it would be no problem.
Because they got one gap in this, right?
Yeah, I believe this is. See, I think technically Blankenship is the down guy here, even though he's down here. I think. Oh, it's man coverage. Hold on, let's see.
So you were saying if it's a 7-man box, are you playing one or two gaps?
So 7-man box is always two potential gaps.
Okay. So that looks like maybe what they're doing right here. They're playing like a too high.
It probably is. It probably
red
is.
zone, so they're down.
Yeah. So good. Actually, that's an excellent observation. So right now, both of them have two potential gaps, and you can actually tell just because they're stacking the linemen.
Right.
right? They're not lined up right in their gap. So you know just by his alignment, he's either got this gap or he's got this gap.
And they're just reading the running back.
This gap. Yep. Running back goes this way, he'll take that gap. Running back goes this way, he takes that gap. Bond's got either this gap or this gap. Now, I think the hesitation here for Bond, right, is because both of his gaps are on the same side of the center. Right? He's either got this A gap here or this C gap out here. So he's probably thinking, I mean, not that he's thinking correctly, but he's probably thinking, well, maybe I do have to go get that A gap because he's running right at it. Smart thing for him to do would just go attack the C gap. Now, the rule is, right, if the back steps to my left, I've got my left side gap. That's his left side gap.
Yeah.
I'm talking about from a defensive perspective.
Yeah, you can tell he's not wanting to leave his gap or that A gap.
Well, he doesn't trust it yet. Nakobe Dean, he played in the system a little longer, a little more experienced. Like, he knows I'm going as soon, like, the rule is the rule. That's it. And I won't be wrong as long as I play the rule.
Yeah, something that jumps out to me is Bond, his alignment, if he would slide over a little bit to the left behind that 3 technique right there, then maybe he commits that C gap earlier because he feels like his leverage is better. You know what I mean?
Maybe. Typically, the way I was coached and the way that I was used to the way I was coached and the way that I coach is to stack for the nose guard to stack the outside leg and for the 3 technique to stack the inside leg. So you're right. He should be moved over right about there. Like that. Now, Nakobe Dean's perfect. He's always perfect, but he's stacking the outside foot of the guard, right? Of the nose guard. He needs to stack the inside foot of the 3 technique.
Yes.
But either way, it's like you said, it's an equidistant thing. Like if this arrow is this long, right, to get to there, right? Look how much farther it is to get to there.
Right.
So you're right. He should move over to his right just a little bit. And then when the ball is snapped, he should run right at the 3 techniques, ass scrape right off of it, super tight inside the C gap. And when this tight end comes to block him, he'll just wedge in there. He'll basically just occupy that C gap. But see how the tight end is able to work up to him and get inside of him?
Yeah.
And that's because he's waiting. Can't wait. All right. Let's see. All right. So here's another one. This is an 8-man box. So like we just saw the last one was a 7-man box. They could have potentially 2 gaps. Now watch how they're lined up here. Now it's 1 yard to go. All right. So they are way up in line. Like they're not taking any chances here. They're basically selling out, right? They're saying, if you throw the ball, okay, we'll live with it, but we're going to try to stop the run. So the Bond's actually up here at like 2 yards, but he's in his A gap. Same thing. Dean is in his B gap, right? And then when the ball is snapped, they just go hit it. Oh man, this is so good by Nakobe Dean. Look at that change of direction. Like this is so important because remember, because if you get up the field right here, you're done, right? You get up the field, 1, you don't make the play. 2, if he winds it back, he can. That's a vertical seam. He can get underneath you and still go to the gap that you just filled. So as soon as you get even with the offensive line, you need to flatten right down the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
And he really cancels every gap. See, nobody else even needs to be playing at this point because Nakobe Dean cancels B gap, A gap, other A gap, other B gap just by running on the backside.
Yeah, I didn't realize he made the play at the beginning.
I know. He's a monster, dude.
I think a lot of kids, especially in high school, get confused between being explosive off the ball but staying, parallel to the line of scrimmage. Because we'll tell them to stay flat, and they'll feel like they can't explode because they're going to get up the field, and they get confused about it.
Here's the thing. They have to have aiming points, Dylan. Like 5 techniques. You're not going up unless it's a pass. Unless it's 3rd down and 10, it's a pass. All right, fine. You can go up the field, right? But every other time, what I always teach, I don't even differentiate it first. I say we attack the outside shoulder of the tackle every single play. That's all you're doing. If he goes down, you stay attached to the shoulder and you squeeze, right? Yeah. If he comes out, you fight the shoulder. But regardless, you're staying attached to the outside shoulder all the time. Now, like I said, if it's a pass, you can convert. If it's 3rd and 20, then you can rush up the field if you want. But if you always just attack the outside shoulder, you'll be fine. It's really the same thing for the interior line too, right? The 3 technique, just attack the outside shoulder of the guard. And that keeps you in the right place. That way, if he goes down, you stay tight to him. If he comes out, you fight it, you open it. Now you occupy the gap.
Yeah.
But in this case, they're clearly in an 8-man because they're in their gaps. They don't wait. They go right away. Bond's a little, like I said, this is early for Bond. He got a lot better as the year went on, but he's hesitating quite a bit there. He could really just blitz that gap. He just needs to go. And then it looks like Jordan Davis kind of gets, I don't know if he's supposed to, I don't know what that is. I don't know why he's stepping out like that. He's so big. Look how 63 is on skates right here. Look at his feet. I mean, good Lord. He's a monster. Everybody's getting knocked back. Jalen Carter fighting a double team over here, holding him up. I don't know if that's Carter. I don't know who that is. Anyway, all right.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, I guess they didn't run any gap scheme. Is this a duo? I think this is a duo.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Double team into the back.
Yeah, same. Now, duos it's even probably more important now to attack downhill because you got to get those double team off, you know? And again, look at Kobe Dean versus Zach Bond here. I mean, that dude's a missile.
Yeah, he's a problem, man.
Well, he understands. Like, remember we were talking about blitzing? I'm not a big run blitzer because if you're getting proper run reads and you understand your responsibility, it is a blitz.
Yeah, that's true.
This is not a blitz. He's just going because he sees his gap. And Bond, I don't know, the hesitation, like Gardner Johnson gets in there before Bond. Now, again, I'm going to go back and say Bond actually had the best season of any NFL linebacker this year in terms of his PFF grade. So, like, he's a monster. He's a beast. But you can tell he's still not quite fully comfortable with the system here.
Right.
Let's see it from the other angle. Look at that. I mean, I love Nakobe Dean. Golly. Look at that. And then you can see though where Bond would be good. This is actually a 7-man box, right? But he knows if he steps this way, he's going. Like it's just a shot out of a cannon. He stepped to my left. I'm going to my left gap. There it is. Right? Bond should come right here to this C gap. But he waits, and again, is this the same play we looked at earlier?
No, this is a different one.
All right, here's sort of a gap scheme. It's not a pure gap scheme. It's a
Like zone kick.
Split zone or zone kick, yeah. But it's the same principles, and I'll explain that in a second. All right, so there you look like they're in an 8-man box. You can see the safety's coming down. Cook, he's coming down in the box, right? So we got both. So let me go back.
I was actually drawing this up earlier because when we played Shelbyville this year, they were running like more of a duo zone kick type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we got killed by it. So I was drawing that up earlier.
So look, back goes to our right, yeah? And so you would think, okay, well, I'm going to go to my right. So these are the arrows where they're going to end up. Now, originally, though, if the back goes to my right, he's here, right?
Mm-hmm.
This end is going in, so I just know that he's going to be here like that.
Right.
All right, he's there. Okay, we're good. But what happens was, so remember I talked to you about the read, 2-step read. I'm going to take my first step with the back, right, and my eyes are going to flash to that side of the line as I'm stepping. I want you to watch Tranquil here. He's probably just reading straight tight end all. Let's see if Bolton does it. Yeah, they're probably both just reading that off tight end, knowing that that's the best key. Okay, but imagine they didn't know that was the best key. A lot of times you can game plan this stuff. You say, okay, hey, look, a Y off, we're going to read him because he's going to take us to the play every time, right? Yeah. So let's say you didn't know that. All right, but the rules still apply. So first step with the back, so he steps to my right. I should step to my right. My eyes go to the right side of the line. I see tight end coming back. That's a contradiction. So now I'm going to what's called honor the contradiction. Right? So now I'm going to rock back the other direction. And you can see, even though the rules would tell us, oh, back goes this way, I should go hit that side gap. So he'd go here, he'd go here, right? Because they see the tight end pulling, that shifts all their gaps over one the other way. So watch this. As soon as he goes, right, his gap goes from here to here where Tranquil was. Tranquil's goes from here to out here because the tight end's going to create a new gap when he makes contact with Karlaftis out here. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So right now, he's either got this gap if the back goes this way and there's no contradiction, or if the tight end comes across, he's got to get out here where Karlaftis is, because when this tight end inserts over here, right there, he's going to create a new gap.
Right.
All right, so I don't know if Karlaftis is going to box this or spill this, but if he boxes it, Tranquil will fit inside of that. If he spills it, Tranquil will fit on the outside of that.
Yeah, you talk about trusting your guy.
Yeah. And really, you can see here, Tranquil, it's pretty smart, actually. He knows as long as he stacks right there, he's got time. He's going to wait to see. Because this guy could insert here, right? If the tight end inserts here, now Bolton will be the inside half, Tranquil will be the outside half. So he's going to buy some time by, again, getting to the heels of the D-line, stacking, and waiting, right? Just being patient. Now, when the tight end keeps coming out here, he could keep coming out here too. He probably sees the running back dive inside and kind of says, forget it. But you can see how that creates a new gap right there inside of Karlaftis. Right? So technically that's Tranquil's gap in there. Now, Bolton was right the whole time because he doesn't have that dilemma. As soon as he goes, he knows he can go, right? He's going to go all the way to this A gap over here. Right? And then Cook should fit in here where Bolton just left.
They're playing one gap on this or two?
This is one gap.
Yeah, they're playing one gap and they get a contradiction, so they go back.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you get contradiction, it ends up being like a two gap almost.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the beautiful thing about the one gap is, well, I'll say, let's see. Yeah, honestly, really, I would read it the same either way. You know, it's really more of where your alignment is.
Right.
They'll line up right in their gaps here, right? If they had a 7-man box, he would be stacking him, he would be stacking him, and they could either go here or here or here or here, right? But in this case, if it's a run, it doesn't matter which direction it is. He's got that gap unless this happens. Now, here the other problem is this guy's like a hybrid right now. He's sort of a lineman, he's sort of a fullback, right? But if we just treat it as the read, step and then redirect if it's contradiction, right? So step with the back and then look at contradiction or confirmation. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go to the next one.
And those are the tough ones because, like you talked about, if they're outside the tackle and off, or what'd you say earlier? You said if they're inside the tackle.
I count them in the backfield if they're off the ball and in between the tackles.
Right. And so when you get that guy outside the tackle, like you said, it's a game planning thing. We know, hey, they pull a lot, so we might read him this week.
Well, yeah, the only difference is who you're reading. Like in that case, if you're reading the tight end, it's even easier, right? Because he's going the other direction. You can go. You don't have to contradict. But if you're not reading him, then you just treat him as a lineman pulling.
Right. Yeah.
So that's really the only dilemma. But I tell you, if you know, we're talking about all this stuff. If you just get those reads down, everyone ends up in the right place, whether they know why or not. You know. All right, so here is another 8-man box, and this is straight zone. Right? There's no kick or anything like that. You've got a jet ghost, but that shouldn't affect anything because that's not considered. He's a receiver. He's not blocking anybody. Even though we just saw that. But all right, so let me go to the other end real quick.
Yeah, it's funny when I first started coaching. I was coaching DBs, and anytime you show me inside film, I'm like, man, I want to see that. Now that's all I watch. Yeah.
Messy.
Now that's all I want to see.
I know, I love it. It's like puzzle pieces.
All right. I got a funny story, or I ain't gonna tell it right here. I'll tell you another time.
Yeah. All right. So you see how Tranquil bumps back in the box?
Yeah.
All right. So it doesn't really change anything. Everyone still has one gap. It's just which gap they have. So everyone's just going to bump over and have the other gap and the reason is because Leo's coming to the outside now.
Yeah.
Because we had a nub over here, so the corner's going to expand. Fine. Leo's got that. Fine. Now it's just like if we had just lined up like this, he'd be in this A gap. He'd stay right there. He'd be in this B gap, and they could just go hit the gap. They don't have to worry about anything, right? Unless there was a contradiction, but there's not.
Yeah, we're playing one gap, right?
Yep, just one gap. Go hit it. A gap, B gap. Easy peasy. And Kansas City does this better than anybody, honestly.
Yeah. Or I'll tell you what I was going to say. I think it's appropriate for this.
Okay.
So my second year at Page, I get there and I have access to where I can send film to other teams and trade film and all that. Because I'm a film junkie, so I'd always be on there. Mm-hmm. And so some team, I think it was like week 1 we're about to play, and they sent us their scrimmage film. They're like, hey, we'll send y'all like 7 different films. Or it might have been later in the season, but they're like sending 7 films for y'all's inside film of 2 different games. And me being young, I'm like, heck yeah, I'll take that deal. Like, I'll get all this film. And so
never trade for the inside film.
Yeah, I accepted. And my buddy I was working with, he goes, man, what the hell? He was like, you just sent them our nudes.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, don't be trading inside film. So after that, I learned real quick.
Anytime I ever got end zone film, I would be in heaven.
Yeah, I didn't understand at first.
Well, part of it is line splits, and you can see the communication of the line better and everything like that. You can see what the quarterback is looking at.
Yeah.
All right, let's see what we got here. All right, we got play action. It looks like they're in man coverage. So, to me, so this is basically one rat, right? And And so Bolton and Tranquil are just sharing the back, right? If the back goes to the left, Bolton will take him. If he comes to the right, Tranquil's got him. He kind of starts off to the left, then comes to the right, so they kind of trade off there. And then Bolton just becomes the cutter looking for a crosser.
You usually have a call for that. Like I know some people call it banjo.
Combo, banjo, yeah.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
been, I'll tell you what, in Savages, we've been calling it combo just because I gave them the choice. I said, you guys call it whatever you want, in and out, combo, banjo, whatever you want. And they're like, let's just call it combo. So they've been calling it combo.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Sometimes I hear banjo as 3-on-2 and combo as 2-on-1. It doesn't matter to me. Like the language, that's why I'm trying to standardize the formation naming because like there's just so many names for different things.
Yeah.
As long as you know what the other guy's talking about, that's all that matters.
Yeah, the more I look at it and watch film, I become more familiar with it. I know I've been texting you at all different hours trying to figure it out.
I love it. I love it, man. Like that's what I live for. When you text me, I'm like, oh, good, I'm useful to somebody. Let me go to all right. Big thing in huge thing, honestly, in coverage for linebackers is knowing what to do in play action. All right, here's a good example. All right. So I'll give you a hint. One of these guys gets it right, the other one gets it wrong. You want to guess before the snap?
I'm gonna say N'Kobe Dean does it right.
Yeah, of course.
Easy
Of course.
guess.
Of course. Now, tell me if you can figure out what the difference is. Doesn't seem to be much difference when you're just looking at it like that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they both they try to get the depth, fine. They do throw it towards Bond's guy, but all right, here's the difference. The only time I tell my linebackers to turn their back, all right, on a pass play is besides man coverage, but in zone coverage, the only time you're allowed to turn your back is when you get sucked up on a run fake. The reason they run play action is to sneak somebody in behind the linebackers, right? They're usually trying to get something between the safety and the linebackers. So as a linebacker, what I was always taught is we called it the oh shit rule, right? Like, oh shit, I got sucked up. I need to turn around and find the deep crosser because there is one.
Right.
You just got to find him, right? So watch Bond here. He gets just as much depth as N'Kobe Dean, but he never locates that crosser. If he had just turned and sprinted, basically at that point it becomes man coverage. Turn and find the crosser and lock on. See how if he had turned right there, as soon as he got sucked up, it's a good fake. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on. You got the motion guy, you got split zone, you got all that, right? Just know that you're beat. Stop, turn, and sprint down the middle of the field. You will find the crosser and just go latch on. Get your hands up in the air.
Right, because you're trying to make up for that lost time that you spent going forward.
And you know what they're doing. Like, look, there are times where they do this and they throw the check down, but the thing that's going to hurt you is the deep crosser. There's always going to be something. Anytime they suck the linebackers up like this, they're always going to find something deep in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
Or intermediate if you want. All right. So look, that time Bond did it wrong, and we can watch it from this angle. And it's tough, right? I mean, it's a pretty good run fake. I mean, it's not great. The line's very flat, all right? Even though, and if he is playing the run, he should be going the other way because of the tight end moving back the other way.
Right.
N'Kobe Dean kind of sees it a little better, all right? And then see how he turns around and he's looking. Now he sees that there's no crosser on his side, so he looks for the next best work.
Yeah.
All right, I'm good.
It looked like he didn't see a crosser, so he zoned off where he was supposed to be.
Right, exactly where he should have been. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a gap scheme.
There we go.
All right, let's look at the other angle. I think somebody came up short here. Looks like we got too high, single back. And nope, Gardner Johnson's coming down, so it's still 8-man. Freeze it. All right, so right now, back is coming to our right, and we have an extra guy coming. So his job right now, just go fit right off the edge of this, the double team. Just go right now, and then whoever comes, which will be this guard, spill him. And N'Kobe Dean can scrape over the top of that, or Gardner Johnson can fill on the outside of that. Make sense?
Yeah, and if you stay tight to that gap, you're going to naturally spill.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. If you always stay tight to the inside half of the gap, you're always going to be in the right place.
Yeah.
He just kind of drifts out here, gets too wide. And
whoever that is kind of bends the gap.
I mean, it's a good job by the running back finding it. But you see Sweat here. I mean, he does a great job of spilling that. And Bond should make this tackle right outside that spill.
Right.
but he goes wide and gets again. He gets dug out there.
Yeah, because he would have ended up fitting off a Sweat if he would have
exactly
done like
exactly.
we were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly like we were talking about. Whoever gets there first spills.
Yeah, and I like that you said that because sometimes the kids get there early and they're like, "Where's my guy at? He's supposed to spill it to me."
Yeah, right. And that's the other reason you don't get deep into the backfield. If you get there first and there's no one yet, don't go upfield because he's about to kick you out. Right. So same thing like with Nakobe Dean on that one play. Just get flat. At that point, get right to the hip and then get flat. Do not go upfield because you will get kicked out. All right. I want you to watch Nakobe Dean here because, I mean, this is just a guy who really understands like gap integrity, right? His probably natural tendency or natural like desire here is to scrape over the top of all this. Okay, but you can see Jordan Davis is taking that A gap. That means Nakobe Dean has that B gap. He has to dig himself in there. See how he fights to stay in it?
Yeah.
And most people would say, well, you just took yourself out of the play. I don't see it that way at all. I think if that back had the opportunity to go there, he would have.
And this is where I was talking to you about overlapping and becoming that scrape player, but he doesn't have anybody behind him spinning down.
He can't scrape here. Yeah.
Yeah.
He can't scrape.
That's what we were talking about.
Think about it. You can't bypass a gap.
Yeah.
That's the way I think about it. You can't bypass a gap. So if there's a gap inside of where you're scraping to, you got to fill that gap first.
So say he did have safety spinning. Say they spun the opposite way, right?
The opposite way, yeah.
So what would you tell him? Because now he's a scrape player.
Well, he would already be bumped over. He would be stacking. Well, no, let's see. Safety's coming down the other way. Safety comes down this way. That guy goes in motion. Right. He's coming down. So he's got this B gap, right? Nakobe Dean's got this A gap, all right? And then as soon as the puller comes, everyone's gap shifts over. Now there's no B gap back here. So Blankenship has that A gap. Or, yeah, let's go back.
Yeah.
So not A gap because so see how Jordan Davis goes in the A gap?
Yeah.
Okay, and Nakobe Dean is going to take the B gap?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If the safety came down, Blankenship, he would take the B gap.
So everybody would shift over one?
Yeah, everyone just shifts over one.
Okay.
See, so now Blankenship would end up right where Nakobe Dean is. Nakobe Dean would scrape past Bond, right?
And then Bond becomes your force, I guess?
Bond should not, no. Bond's going outside. He should not be out there.
Well, I'm
Bond
saying if it was the other way, but yeah, I'm with you.
No, look, watch. Freeze it right here. All right. Right now, Bond should go because he's there first.
Yeah.
Nakobe Dean could scrape over the top of this and be basically a free hitter. Bond should make the play regardless. Okay, regardless of 7-man or 8-man.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was talking in the situation we were talking about if they spun the other way.
If Blankenship came down, I would
yeah.
still want Bond to go. Nakobe Dean could scrape all the way outside.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
First guy there has to spill.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I never want to pass up a gap to get to another one. If there's a gap right there, and there is, see, Sweat gets inside, Bond should be right here. Nakobe Dean can scrape over the top of that.
Yeah, and that's how it's going to work out most of the time, because especially on the inside kid.
Well, they're bringing their safety down to the tight end, right? So this is how it's going to work out here. Now, if it was counter and they were running the other way, then it would fit like we just talked about.
Right.
Yeah. By the way, just for shits and giggles, I differentiate counter and power a little different than some people. I say power is to the 3 technique or to the tight end, and counter is away. All right, counters to the shade.
Right.
That's an open front, right? Some people think if they take a counter step, it's a counter. I don't know, but I always designated the ones that are to the 3 technique. That's a power because it's just a different block. All right, let's see what else.
I used to kind of look at it that way, but then here they differentiate it. If the guard's kicking, then it's counter, and if the tight end H is kicking, then it's power.
Right. So. The problem is sometimes there's not a like. Have you ever heard of 1 back power with only one? Only one puller, right? So like you have 1 back power, there's no one kicking. I'm talking about like just say 1 back formation, and you got spread, right? You
I think that last play might have been that.
Let's see. Well, yeah. I mean, you could count that. Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. So to me, this is 1 back power because it's to the 3 technique. Is it? I think it is. Yeah. 1 back power. All right. This one, we got another gap scheme here. Okay, now we got 2 backs. So now we actually have a true power, even though it's a little different because the guard's doing the kicking and the H-back is doing the wrapping.
Right.
All right, but it's still exactly the same concept. It's down, kick out, and wrap. All right. So let's look at this from the other angle. All right, let's see. All right. Hey, there you go. There's Blankenship coming down now. So here we go. We got exactly what we were talking about. That.
Okay, cool.
All right. So, all right. So to me, Bond is wrong here. Right. I would say Bond needs to go hit that B gap. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If Bond hit now, they might have talked about this differently, right? Either Bond. So there's a couple of things that can happen here. When the tackle goes down, right, and I guess Jordan Davis is in a shade. He's in a 2-eye, but he's playing the A gap, right? So we got him here. All right. Now, when he goes down, the tackle block's down here. If Sweat comes down, which is what I would prefer, Sweat comes down here and spills this, then Bond can fit right off because what Sweat's doing is canceling that backside B gap.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
In other words, here, watch when this runs. Stop it right there. Now, if Sweat goes here behind the tackle and inside the puller, then he cancels that B gap. Then Bond's good. He can do exactly what he's doing.
Right.
He's still too wide, right? But instead, what I would rather see is Bond go right to that B gap. If the tackle's coming down hard, fine, you can punch him into the gap and then stay tight off his hip. But it looks like Sweat either messed this up or was told to box this. I think he just kind of got there late because it does look like he's trying to spill it. So what I would prefer here to see is when the tackle blocks, the tackle really should be getting Nakobe Dean. I think he's looking for him. So he's going to help him, make sure he's got him inside. Then he's going to chip up to the second level, right? He'll climb to him. He should be as tight as he can off this hip. If Sweat gets there first, he'll scrape right off of Sweat's butt. If Sweat gets there first, he'll scrape right off of Sweat's butt. If he gets there before Sweat does, he needs to spill this guy.
Yeah.
Right? To Sweat. But we got.
He ends up hitting the puller. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe they're all boxing. It might be because it's man coverage or something. That they're boxing everything. Because a lot of teams will do that. They'll box everything in man coverage. All right, so let's say that. Let's say if that was the plan, then that makes sense. But he boxes the first blocker, Bond boxes the next one. All right. The problem is we got nobody outside. There's nobody.
I was gonna say sometimes when you spin to one side, opposite of the spin, you might box it.
Yeah, it could be too.
So it could be like they're spilling to the left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the problem is we got Nakobe Dean doesn't need to be in this gap because Blankenship has that gap.
Right.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's a gap inside of this block. See, when this guy blocks Bond right here, that gap is open.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think this is just the biggest problem here is, Nakobe Dean can't be expected.
And that's the problem with boxing. The end didn't get hands on that tackle, so he's reaching the backer easily.
Yeah, exactly. I think you just nailed it. I think the problem here is just the technique. If he spills this, then everything just bounces and Nakobe Dean could scrape over the top. But as it stands, he can't bypass that gap.
Yeah, I think I told you we played Henry County in the semifinals, like my fourth year coaching, and I didn't really understand a box like that yet. But we got gashed for like 250 on the ground, and it was just power counter, and our backside backer was getting reached, and we boxed the inside backers.
Mm-hmm.
And once I started to understand it, I was like, damn, man, that's what happened.
Yeah, just knock the ball off the table, man. As long as it's going sideways, it's not hurting you.
Yeah.
What's this? What in the world am I doing? Oh, man. All right. One last thing I want to say about
Oh, no, you good.
About backers. On screens. All right. Now, forget screens. In man coverage, you can't give ground. Like, never back up in man coverage as the linebacker, ever. Okay? Go right to your coverage. And the reason is because of this. For screens just like this. What's the Nakobe Dean? Oh. Actually, they're not in man coverage here. So this is just this is just a great break, I think. What's happening? Yeah, no, this is not the man coverage. Let me show you the man coverage one. Oh, okay. So this time Nakobe Dean messes up that same thing we were talking about. He gets play action. Just turn and find him. There's going to be a crosser behind you.
Right.
You see what I mean? All right. Let's see.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good coaching point.
Here it is. Oof, golly. All right, so now we're in man coverage. Watch the Kobe Dean. See, he could just drift and like stay deep and wait for the running back to come to him, and it looks like the running back staying in coverage. I mean, in protection, right? So I would like him to actually go much faster than this. I would like him to attack that back right now because if he does stay in a block, you can add to the rush.
Right.
You become an extra blitzer, but he gets there quick enough. And the reason is, see how these linemen are going out to get him. All these guys are leaving to just get in his way. If he left this space and didn't get there in time, he would have a wall in front of him.
Yeah.
But luckily, he beats them all there and pow.
Damn. Yeah, I like that. We struggled with screens a lot last year, so I'll have to talk to you more about that too.
I can't stand screens.
Man, screens and unbalance killed us last year. In my first year,
I can help you with both those. So screens, you got to treat it just like a run game. There are gaps, and there are gap fits, right? And so the first guy there has got to set the edge. The next guy's got to fill the next gap, and so on. It's like kickoff too.
Yeah.
And unbalance is just learning to re-identify the center. That's
Right.
what I like. But
yeah, I think they've gotten better at it as we went on. But before I got here, they never really heard of it like an unbalanced offense and adjusting to it. They just kind of, I don't know what they did before I got here, but
yeah, I don't know what else you would do besides re-identify the center.
right. The way I'm gonna teach them this year is we're gonna go to a 3 technique to the side of the on-ball tight end anytime there's an on-ball tight end. And so I'm gonna tell them if there's a third guy on the line of scrimmage, we're adjusting the front to that side.
Yeah,
Look, if he's off the ball, we're not doing it.
That's old school rules. Over fronts, that's why the over fronts were like the primary defensive front forever. It's because pro formation, there was always a tight end on the ball, right? And the problem is if you have a shade to the side of the tight end, you have 2 uncovered linemen, right? Like say you have a shade and a 9 technique outside the tight end.
Right.
You have 2 completely uncovered linemen. You got the guard and the tackle. Nobody's dealing with that. And that's impossible for a linebacker to deal with. So I would always set the 3 technique.
And we had teams that would go tackle over. You see that a lot nowadays. And so our kids, like they would think the strength was called to the tight end, but he'd be the tackle on the backside. And so we got confused. We played Green Hill, and they kept calling the strength to that tight end because you would think, the kids are thinking like that's the strong side. But if we put
you could still treat that as the strong side. Now you just have to identify the guard as the center.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean?
But if we put it this way, like the third guy, if there's a third guy on the line of scrimmage from the center, then we need to be on that side. Whether it's a tackle, tight end. Yeah.
Well, he is a tight end. If he's a tackle, he's a tackle, but he's in a tight end position. He's still eligible.
Yeah.
Right. Very oftentimes in those cases, the backside tight end isn't even eligible.
Yeah.
Problem is in high school, you can't wear an ineligible number and be eligible.
Yeah, that's true. So that backside tight end is eligible a lot of times the way they do it.
Yeah, as long as the receiver to that side is off the ball.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, cool, man. Well, thanks, Dylan. I appreciate you joining me.
If you want to break down film with me like Coach Lynville, drop the word guest in the comments below. Till next time.